All right, students, today we're leaving the digestive system and making our way into the urinary system. Over here, part of the excretory system is the urinary system. In this diagram here, we can see where the kidneys are located here. This would be the vena cava and the aorta. And down in here, we have the urethra tubes, and we'll move on. So, the function of the excretory system is to get rid of waste. Get rid of is excrete, waste, things that are not helpful to the body. As the body is taking in food and that food is being converted into usable energy, there's going to be byproducts left over of that. And so the body must also get rid of those products. The system responsible for that is the excretory system. It helps maintain homeostasis, balance for the body, because it's controlling the amount of fluid that's in the body. Here's a diagram of the system. Okay, here we have on this side, which would be your right side, the inferior vena cava. Okay, remember what it's doing with blood? And the aorta, so the vena cava is taking blood away from the kidneys. The aorta is bringing it to the kidneys. These bean structures here, bean-shaped like structures, are the kidneys. And from the kidneys, waste get filtered into these tiny tubes called ureters. And we'll talk more about them in a moment. And then it collects in this area called the urinary bladder, a storage chamber. And then when enough is stored, pressure will build up on the sphincter muscle here in the urinary bladder, and it will pass through this tiny tube here called the urethra. So we have the kidneys here, the ureters, there's two of them, the urinary bladder, and then the urethra, one of those. Okay, some of the functions our kidneys have. One, our body makes ammonia in the liver, and that ammonia gets turned into urea. Blood transports that urea to the kidneys, so the kidneys are filtering out the urea out of the blood. And so this is important that our kidneys are functioning well, because if not, that supply builds up and it becomes very dangerous or toxic to us, life-threatening. Okay? Now, to remove it, each kidney inside of it has small little structures here. Right along through here, all these little structures in here are called nephrons. They filter the blood. And the fluid that gets made as a result of that is called urine. Okay, so the nephrons are the small structures in the kidney that filter the blood. The urine is the product of what has been filtered out, the waste product. Sometimes in kidneys we get blockage because the urine is going to want to pass through here to the ureter tube. Sometimes we get blockage like here. We see the kidney stones. These are calcified buildup of material there, and that's preventing the flow of urine. So you can see here, so it's extremely painful. Your kidneys can't function out this. It causes a lot of pain. Usually you'll see it in lower back pain first. And you can see here, it's pretty much blocking the flow of urine. And so now we got a couple of options. If a person develops kidney stones, this is usually caused by too much salt or too much sugar in the diet over a period of time. But to get rid of them, one is you have to pass the stones. So that means it's got to pass through the ureters, into the urinary bladder, and through the urethra. Second, they may use a sonogram and try to break them up a little bit, or they have to give you some type of medication, or it could require surgery. Okay, so the urine, as we said, collects in the kidneys and then goes into the ureters. So again, we see that. Here would be the ureter over here as well. So it's getting into there. And from the ureter, a process that we also learned about in the digestive system, peristalsis, is a twitching and moving of the muscle lining inside the ureters, move the urine to the bladder, where it's going to be stored until it can't hold anymore. And once it's there, the little muscle at the end of that, where the urethra is going to, the sphincter muscle there is going to finally open up to allow urine to pass through. Your kidneys work at keeping the right amount of water in your body. The urine, you can tell a lot from the urine. There's over 90 tests that doctors do with urine. But the color of your urine will tell you a lot. Light colored, yellow color means that you're well hydrated. Dark color means that you're not well hydrated and need to get more water into your diet. Okay, now, problems that can be as a result of this, of your kidneys not functioning well, is one, there's two types. One is type 1 diabetes. Okay, in here, like normal, the stomach changes the food into glucose. And that sugar gets into the bloodstream as it goes through absorption. Okay, and you can see it passing into the bloodstream. And the pancreas then is making little or no insulin. And that's a problem because that sugar's not getting broken down and filtered. And so no insulin gets into the bloodstream. So glucose builds up in there. And too much in there can be life-threatening for people, particularly with type 1. Type 1 diabetes cannot be prevented. It's an autoimmune disease. Their pancreas just stops producing insulin. There's nothing to do with diet, lifestyle. There's nothing you can do to prevent it or cure it. There are children who are born with this type of diabetes. Women in their pregnancies can develop this type of diabetes or type 2. There are other children who are normal, are born healthy, and something happens and almost overnight, the pancreas just stops producing. So at this point in time, the person, since they don't have insulin, they're going to need a lot of insulin into their diet. Many of them will wear insulin pumps that when they eat, when their body is constantly being regulated to make sure the right amount of sugar, only the right amount of sugar is in the blood. Okay, type 2. Same type of thing. The pancreas is making insulin. It gets into the bloodstream, but the problem is the glucose is resistant to the insulin. So the pancreas says, oh, there's still too much sugar. That makes even more insulin, and still the body is still resistant to it. And so over a long enough period of time, the pancreas can wear out. So people with this type of diabetes will also need to be on insulin. The problem is with this one isn't, you're not born with this one. This one comes on. Okay? Sometimes people get it by getting overweight. Used to be only people with who were overweight were at risk. Now we have teenagers, kids who have type 2 diabetes, and I believe a lot of that is caused by the increase of sugar into our diets and carbohydrates into the diet. Okay? So this just shows you some of the complications. We'll look a little bit more. We're talking about obesity. If you look here, by 2023, doctors are estimating that we'll have a 5% cause in the amount of strokes, 12% in angina, which is a clogging of arteries, 18% increase of heart attack, 28% of high blood pressure, and 54% increase of what we have today by 2023 caused by obesity, overweightness. Okay, some of the complications from having too much sugar build up in the blood is heart problems, strokes, eyesight problems. People with diabetes have to have their eyes tested every year. They can go blind. Kidney problems can cause a person to need to go on dialysis. The kidneys aren't functioning, and they've been overused because of the amount of functioning it's trying to do of what's in the blood, because the pancreas isn't breaking that down. You can have feet problems, primarily caused by, now that the blood system has been compromised, blood making its way down to the extremities has less energy, less things in there, and it causes problems with that. You can also have skin problems. So a lot of complications as a result of diabetes. Another thing that can be told from urine is whether or not you're pregnant. A pregnancy test is determining whether or not in the urine there's a presence of the HCG hormone, human chorionic gonadotropin. They're testing that. So the urine goes in, it tests whether or not, and most home pregnancy tests are about 98% accurate. Now, you can have a false test. You can test, and you're testing just before the urine actually will have this hormone in it. So you might have to retest on that. Hopefully that is something you should not have to be worrying about, of course, until you are out of high school, out of college, have a job, get married. None of those things should you have to be worrying about before that. All right. So you have some homework questions to begin answering. And tomorrow we have a couple of labs that we're going to do. And then you'll be taking your test on Thursday. Everybody have a great day.